Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is hating your father and mother. And what does the Bible have to say about that? What did Jesus have to say about it? And the Old Testament, what did it have to say about it? So we're going to start out by reading from Exodus 20, verse 12, New King James Version. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. This is the first commandment with a promise attached to it, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you, which Yahweh your God is giving you. So, that's pretty clear. Honor your father and mother. Otherwise, you're going to have a short life, and you're not going to be living in the land very long, whether it means you're going to be exiled to another country or if you're going to die. Let's go to the next one. Now, this one we've actually talked about before. This is the rich young ruler and Jesus. And it's interesting because it says that he comes to him and says, "Good teacher, what good things shall I do? What good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life?" So he said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, that is God. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments." Jesus didn't say, "Believe in me." He said, "Keep the commandments." And that's very interesting. He said to him, "Which ones?" Jesus said, and he lists them. "You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and mother. Honor your father and your mother. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Notice that he doesn't say to love God or to not have any other gods before God. This is very interesting. He focuses on the social commandments. The young man said to him, "All these things I have kept from my youth. What do I still lack?" Jesus said to him, "If you want to be perfect or complete, go sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me." But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Now here's a man who honored his father and mother, who obeyed the commands that Jesus said he should obey. He'd already been obeying them. And yet he couldn't follow Jesus because he still lacked that one thing. But let's focus in. It says that honor your father and your mother. That's from Exodus or Deuteronomy. It depends on which list you want to look at. Now let's go to the next verse. Now this is a very interesting verse. It's in the Old Testament in the minor prophet Micah, verse 7. And we can start right here with verse 5 through 7. "Do not trust in a friend. Do not put your confidence in a companion. Guard the doors of your mouth from her who lies in your bosom. For son dishonors father. Daughter rises against her mother. Daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are the men of his own household. Therefore, I will look to Yahweh. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me." Now, these people are actually breaking the commandment when they're rising up against each other in their family. Because you could extrapolate that you should be honoring everyone in your family, not just your father and mother. Although it says technically father and mother. But we see Jesus extending these commandments. Like you've heard it say, "Do not commit adultery," but if you've already taken her into your heart, you've committed adultery. So these people are dishonoring each other. Son dishonors father, daughter rises against her mother, daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Man's enemies are the men of his own household. And of course it shouldn't be. But this is also saying the same thing that Jesus says, that we're going to read in a minute. So here in Matthew 10, starting in verse 34, it says, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be those of his own household. So he's quoting right from Micah, but he's saying that he's the one who's going to cause that to happen. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and he who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. So, we see now that Jesus was coming to turn those people against their own families. He says so. He says so. I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be those of his own household. Straight from Micah. So, Jesus is claiming that he's the one who brings this to happen. And why is that? It says, he who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. So he's raising himself, the love of Christ himself, exalting that above that commandment. Honor your father and mother. Wow. Wow. This is very interesting. Let's go to the next one. This is the parallel passage in Luke. Let me see if I can get... There we go. All right, so it says in chapter 14, Luke 14, starting in verse 25. Now great multitudes went with him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going to war against another king, does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. So now we see here in Luke, there's a bit more filling it out, because he says, yes, and his own life also, which harkens back to the second of the two commands that summarize the law and the prophets. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so if you are also hating your own life, what does that say you should do towards everyone else? You need to also hate them in the same way. Now that's kind of creepy, because today we've got people who actually hate their own lives. They cut themselves with razor blades. They do all kinds of crazy things. And they've lost it, and they hate their life. But they hate it in a different sense than what Jesus said. There's some parallel to it. But what Jesus meant was that we do not put anything about our life above our devotion to Christ, our obedience to Christ. Even what our father says or our mother says or anyone says, and especially not what we ourselves say. That's what this is getting at. So, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. So if you think you're going to hold on to everything and make them a priority in front of Christ, and then maybe Christ will come on Sundays, you are not his disciple, and you cannot be his disciple. It is impossible. He just eliminated you right there. So if you want to be his disciple, you have to ask yourself, do I really want to enough, or I'm going to forsake everything? That's what he's saying by the man who starts to build a castle and counts the cost, a tower, and counts the cost first to see if he has enough, because he might start building and then realize he doesn't have enough. You might start following Christ and realize that you really don't want it that badly, and you go back to what you were doing and you become a laughingstock of everyone. What was that, huh? You talked so much about following Christ, for those first few years. And now what? You're just like all of us. Yeah? How many Christians have you known like that? Maybe you've been like that. Maybe you are like that. You definitely need to ask yourself, am I saved? Am I saved? Do I realize the gravity of my sin and how much that I really owe the Lord? I myself came this close to death twice, and God rescued me both times, one at my own hands and one at the hands of cancer. And He rescued me twice from death. I know how much I owe Him. Not everyone is as blessed as I am, to know from an actual experience of that proximity of death. But we should all know that we have life and breath thanks to our mother and father, of course. That's why the commandment is there. But ultimately, it's God who gave us our life and breath, because our parents could not make that conception happen. They could only set up the situation where it might happen. But God is the one who conceived you in your mother's womb. God is the one who caused you to grow in your mother's womb. Now you say, well, but my mother is one who nourished me in the womb. And that is true. But how does that nourishment actually happen? She can't make it happen. She only eats and then hopes it happens. So who is the one that actually makes sure that nourishment actually goes from her eating, from her mouth, into you in her womb? God. Of course. God is the one. We owe our lives to God. And every day we have a risk of dying. And yet you're not dead. You could die any day. There could be a gas line explosion. I saw that up near Seattle. It was burning at night. It had blown up an entire house. Boom. Whole house was gone. That could happen to you. You could be in a car and get in a car accident. Everyone knows that. You could get on a plane and be in a plane accident. You could have a heart attack anywhere. Doesn't matter what your age is. There are people in their 30s who have heart attacks. You could just die at night. There was a man at this one church, 35 years old. He just died at night. They don't know why. He just died. The fact that you're alive means that you owe your life to God. And now think about the sin that you've committed. This sin that you've committed, these sins that you've committed against God and against other people. And yet you owe your entire life to God. And yet with ingratitude, you are sinning against Him and sinning against other people. Maybe you're not now, but you were. Do you realize what you've done? Do you realize? I realized I was cut to the heart. More than once I was cut to the heart over that issue. We're alive because of Him. Likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Cannot be my disciple. Remember to subscribe down below and like the video, and then make a comment, whether it's a question or a comment. It's okay. We read all of them and we try to respond to all of those. Get on over to our website, The Rooted Word, and start reading the translation and also the articles that we've posted. It's at therootedword.com. And may the Lord bless you as you continue to seek Him with all your heart.